What's up, boxing fans? Episode 14 of the Slip and Weight Podcast. Let's get it. This weekend was crazy for the fights, man. It was basically all day on Saturday. It was the first time there was multiple promotions doing fights in one day, as far as I know. There was a couple days I know where there was one or two cards, but I think this was the first time that there was three, pretty significant cards all in one day. One with DAZN, one with which is obviously promoted by Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. There was one on Showtime, which was promoted by PBC, and another on ESPN, which I believe was promoted by Queensberry Promotions, but ESPN had the American television rights, so it was a top-ranked boxing show. The first one I was going to talk about is this card that they did in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they essentially took a four-way intersection and turned it into a ring with multiple sort of routes that the fighters could walk into the ring, and they turned, certain parts into, I don't want to say a platform, but into a walkway where, there was essentially this two blocks that was completely designed and designated for this fight, and it was kind of cool looking. They had a couple aerial shots of it in a drone camera, and it was very thorough. I was kind of impressed that they were able to take, literally just a city street and, essentially turn it into a television studio, and it looked great. It was really cool. It seems like an efficient way to put on a card because you don't have to worry about, you can block off the streets. You don't have to worry about people sort of gathering around there. And there's people watching from their apartments. So there's something cool about that too, where the community can kind of peep in on what's going on. But the main event was Cecilia Brækhus defending her title, I believe her lightweight title, against Jessica McCaskill. But before I get into that, I take that back. I believe she was the welterweight champion. But there were some good fights on the undercard. The first one was Nikita Bobby winning a unanimous decision against a guy named Jarvis Williams. Bobby, 9-6 knockouts. I've seen him a few times on these early DAZN fights. It seems like they would like to make something of him, that, they keep putting him on TV. The first couple of times I saw him, I don't know who the guys that he was in with, but they weren't really anything special, and he was kind of blasting them out of there. And there was no doubt, he's got some decent hand speed. He knows how to throw punches. He's got some nice power. But then there was maybe the third or fourth time that I saw him. I can't remember the name of the guy he was fighting, but it was a guy that was just kind of a good, competent boxer that wasn't doing anything really special, but just kind of knew how to fight like a veteran. And he looked a little confused, that he was getting hit a good amount. And there wasn't a lot of upper body movement. There wasn't a lot of foot movement. There wasn't a lot of defense other than keeping his hands up for the most part, to be honest with you. So I wasn't entirely sure what to think of this guy. So they put him in with Jarvis Williams, who was 8-2-1 with 5 knockouts going in, now 8-3-1. And he also was just a good, competent boxer, not really doing anything special, but, letting his hands go and staying in the pocket and not running, not going into a defensive shell. It was just a good, competent boxer trying to win a fight. And again, this guy, Bobby, he was getting hit a lot. And it was with stuff that, at certain levels, if he gets hit with that, he might be in trouble because of how easy it was to set up. Ultimately, he has more power, and he looked like he was about 10 years younger. So he was able to ultimately kind of overwhelm Williams with his offense, with his power, and with his size, because he was a lot bigger than this guy. But it's weird. I'm not really sure what to think of this guy, because I really like how he throws his punches, but he's very stiff. There isn't a lot of upper body movement. There isn't a lot of fluidity in his movement. And I don't know if that's something he's showing in the gym and then not on the night. I don't know if it was just, it's been Corona and he's a young guy. He's still learning. That's very possible. But I do think that he's got some potential, because it's obvious he can put his hands together and he can hurt a guy, and he can do it quickly. So he just needs to maybe work on some of the things that set that up. You know what I mean? You can't go in with everybody and just expect that they're going to stand and trade with you for a second, and then when you catch them with a good one, boom, it's over. It doesn't always work like that. So, in fact, it very rarely works like that. When you get up above that first tier of opponent in your professional career, guys stop just going down on the first good shot. They're much more, because he's fighting guys that want to win. And that's a big step up. It's not that any fighter goes in with the intention to lose, but there is levels. And at a certain level, guys don't just go down when you hit them with a good shot. So I think that, maybe he needs to slow it down a little bit. And because ultimately the knockouts are going to stop coming if he doesn't regularly start doing some of those setup things. And what I mean by that is, if you watch the fight, there's actually a handful of rounds where he sort of just stays behind his jab and pops this guy over and over again, and it actually really boxes very nicely. It stays busy. And you can see at the end of the round that Williams is more tired than he was in any of the rounds where Bobby's just throwing bombs, where a lot of times, he can block it. He can slip that. He can see it coming. But if it's just the jab for the whole round popping you, it's got like a 2 or 3 out of 10 in power, but every time it hits you, you got to reset. That's when I thought he looked his best. And I hope that at some point that can just kind of become his style, and he can become a good boxer puncher, because he has the hand speed and the athleticism to do it. It's just, does he have the defensive mentality to do it? I would say, regardless, this kid's coming in for his first loss pretty soon. I don't know who they're going to put him, the minute they put him in with somebody with some real slickness, he's going to have a hard time. And I think he'll be the kind of guy who needs to have that experience to take himself as seriously as he needs to. I'm just speculating from seeing the guy fight 4 or 5 times also, but I've also, I've seen enough of it now, and I like what I see. I enjoy watching him. He's an exciting, fun fighter to watch. But I would say he's in for a loss sooner than later, and I think it'll make him better. The second fight that was on was between a guy from Uzbekistan. I think his name is Shakram Giyasov. He's 10-0, 8 knockouts, against a veteran named Winston Campos, 31, 8-6. With 19 knockouts. These guys were junior welterweights. This was kind of a weird fight, because the first round, Giyasov came out, and he's got a very kind of Golovkin style footwork, very methodical. He didn't really let his hands go too much. The minute he started letting his hands go on this guy Campos really just went into a shell and was almost turning his back on him. And Giyasov stopped him in the third round. There's not a lot I could tell from Giyasov from this fight, other than he does hit hard, because Campos, the first round, was very competitive. He was letting his hands go, kind of sitting in the pocket. The minute he started catching some shots, Campos was like, you could see mentally the confidence was gone, and he just sort of stopped letting his hands go. So not a lot to talk about here, but I would say that Giyasov is somebody to look out for. Sometimes it's hard to read with these, these kind of more jobber type opponents, because some jobbers come into the fight to win and some come for the check. I'm not saying this guy showed up for the check, but he didn't look that invested in winning the fight, to be honest with you. And he wound up getting knocked out with a body shot very badly. Giyasov has really good technique. He fights a little like Golovkin. He throws nice body shots. He's big. I would think he'll move up above junior welterweight at some point, but maybe not. I think He's one of these Eastern European guys that's, still at the early part of his pro career, but he's in his late 20s because of the long amateur career. But I think Giasov is another guy that you're going to see again. He's at a different kind of level than a Bobby in as far as his development. He's maybe not maxed out his potential, but I think that he's a fully formed, fully developed fighter that is just going to need to test that skill level at different levels of opponent. Which leads me to the next fight. I believe this guy was also from Uzbekistan, Israel Madrimov. Took on a guy named Eric Walker. These guys were junior middleweights. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know that much about Walker. I think I'd seen him fight once, and I knew that he had been on that newer iteration of the Contender Series. From what I had seen from Madrimov, I was kind of under the impression that he had the potential to be an elite level fighter, like already. I think he's 25 years old. He's had 6 fights, and going into this one, he had stopped everyone he had ever fought. But, and what I'd seen from him was the ability to kind of punch and create a crazy angle to create a whole new set of punches, a whole new combination. And he's been really good at it against the guys that I've seen. Oddly enough, with this fight, I don't know what happened, but he was getting hit a lot very early. Walker, credit to him. I think that's a lot of it is just a credit to him that he came out so fast and so aggressive the first couple of rounds. And I kind of felt like through 8, it was even. And then in this 9th round, man, they had one of the weirdest fucking rounds I've ever seen. Where Madrimov clips Walker with a right hand and puts him down hard, like he might not be getting up hard. And the ref immediately is waving like on the floor, like no knockdown. And the announcers are going crazy. I'm looking at it like, what the fuck is he seeing right now? Like, the guy got hit with a punch, he went down. And he's saying that Madrimov pushed Walker on the way down. So they're showing the replay, and he lands the right hand, and he kind of lowers his shoulder, but it's very apparent that Walker is on the way down. So at this point, he gives Walker time to recover. He says, yeah, he caught him with a good shot, but he also pushed him on the way down, so it's no knockdown. So now he's given him 5 minutes to recover, and he takes several minutes of it. And it was weird. It was like, this should be a knockout win for Madrimov right now. And Walker is getting a crazy break right now. So the couple minutes goes by, they resume. And to be honest with you, Madrimov really gives Walker a really bad beating for the last 4 rounds, 3.5 rounds. It's just really one-sided. You might even make the point that it could have been stopped a couple of different times, especially I think they said Walker was 37 years old and has a good record of his own. He's 20-3 with 9 knockouts. He definitely came in with the intention to win. But at the last stretch of that fight, especially after the knockdown, the devastating knockdown, it was kind of hard to imagine that, he was going to be able to come back from that. So I would have thought about stopping the fight maybe in the 11th round. And Madrimov gets a unanimous decision, but for me, where he is in his development is sort of unclear. I would have thought he's like maybe getting ready to have his first title shot pretty soon. Like, why waste time with this guy? He's supremely talented. But after this, I think he may want to take on a couple more of the Eric Walkers of the world, because maybe if he caught Eric Walker, when he was 5 years younger, based on what I saw, I mean, he might not have won that fight. Just keeping it real. He had a couple real scares, and there was a couple of rounds in there where Walker really put it on him, like it was one-sided round of Madrimov just kind of getting through it. So I think he maybe needs to rethink some of the stuff he's doing. And to be honest, I think a lot of these guys too, and I've said this before, but with this coronavirus, man, I don't think everybody's going to come back their best or they're have the most sort of fresh, youthful performance that they've had. Some of these guys are going to be rusty. This could have been that, or it just could have been Walker came in really game, and Madrimov has been in with the right guys to look how he's looked. And sometimes that can happen. But I would say he's another one that they are probably going to keep putting on DAZN pretty regularly. I had heard somewhere that he was going to fight Erislandy Lara. Dude, based on this, man, he's not ready for that smoke. I could tell you that. Like he'll absolutely get a boxing lesson if he fights Lara right now. So, I mean, if he wants to take that fight, kudos to him. But I don't think he's ready for it. I think they should keep developing him. And then the main event, Jessica McCaskill pulled off the upset against Cecilia Braekhus. Braekhus was 36-1 going into this fight, 9 knockouts. McCaskill was 8-2, 3 knockouts. And I'd seen McCaskill before. She was pretty impressive, but not really anything special, to be honest with you. Like, I saw her against Katie Taylor, and Katie made her look, like a B- level fighter. Cecilia in this fight, to me, looked her age. I'm not going to say she looked like an old fighter, because there's still some things she can do as far as boxing from the outside, which she did a really nice job of the last 3 rounds. But the first 7 rounds, it really was kind of 50-50. And, you could have called it really either way in most of the rounds for the first 7 rounds. That being said, I thought Cecilia kind of outboxed McCaskill the last few rounds and pulled it out. And I was a little disappointed with the decision, to be honest. I'm happy for McCaskill. It's a great win for her, and it kind of puts her on a different level, but I'm not really sure she deserved it as far as the fight. As a person, she deserves it for sure, but I just didn't think she won the fight, man. I thought the class told over time a little bit, and the home stretch of the fight kind of showed that. And I thought even in the first part of the fight, the first 6-7 rounds, when they were more even, I just felt like she had the cleaner work. I thought she was landing the cleaner punches, and I thought she deserved it. It's unfortunate that a 38-year-old champion, I mean, they were calling her the greatest women's boxer of all time on the air. It would be a shame if that's how her career ended, that, a weird decision took her title away from her. I would be disappointed with that, to be honest. So I hope she doesn't retire. I hope they maybe can do a rematch. It was a good fight. It was a good pace. Their styles mix well. They should do another one and solidify it for sure. So the next card, that same night, that was the main event of that card, the Cecilia fight. The next card on Showtime was at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And there was some really good talent on here, man. Otto Wallin, a heavyweight, stopped a guy named Travis Kaufman in the 5th round. Wallin, if you haven't seen him, was Tyson Fury's last opponent before the Wilder rematch. And if you remember that fight, he cut Fury with a punch. I think Fury had 2 cuts in that fight, and the whole fight was like, maybe they're going to stop it. And obviously down the stretch, Fury kind of took over the fight and showed his class. But I think everyone sort of felt like this guy Wallin maybe is a new factor in the heavyweight division. It's a little hard to tell with Kaufman because I'm not really sure what level he's at. He wasn't in great shape. It looked like he was breathing hard from the first, 2nd round, and you can really hear that without the audience. But Wallin's got a great jab, man, and he stayed right behind it. He stayed real technical, and he was working the body, which there's a lot of heavyweights that don't do. So now that, guys like him and Jared Anderson, some of these younger guys that work the body really well, I think they're a problem, man. I think they're a problem, and I think this guy's only going to get better. He's got that really crisp kind of Eastern European technique. I think he's Swedish, but he fights a little bit Eastern European. Nice long jab, nice hand speed, good reflexes on the defense. So I think Wallin gives anyone at heavyweight problems. I'm not sure who he beats, but if it's the guy that fought Fury that night, I think he beats most of them. I think he's a problem for any of them. The second fight was a guy named Rolly Romero at lightweight. He's 12-0, 10 knockouts, and he got a unanimous decision against Jackson Marinez from DR, 19-1, 7 knockouts. I could tell you right now, this was a horrible decision. This is the first one since boxing's been back that I was straight up pissed about. I mean, one of the judges had it 10-2 for Romero, which I don't know how that's possible. Romero maybe won 4 rounds in the whole fight, clearly. Outside of that, for the most part, Marinez gave him a boxing lesson. This was a boxing lesson. He took it to him from the outside the whole fight, kept him on the end of the jab, kept him turning. Really, Romero wasn't landing much of anything. And, after the fight, they do this post-fight interview, and he has it in his mind that, the guy didn't let his hands go. All he did was run and jab, and then he starts calling out Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz, and he's calling out all those guys, and I realized, this kid's fucking delusional, man. I'm not saying he can't fight. He could fight, but he definitely didn't win this fight. And if he thinks he could take any of those guys, this guy right here, I would say, is rocketing towards his first loss. And it's going to be interesting how he handles it, because he looks like somebody who's really in his head about who he is and his skill level. Because his skills are very rudimentary. He's got some good hand speed and some good power, but he doesn't know how to set anything up. And I think actually losing this fight and having that experience, might actually help his development. But instead he gets a gift. I think in his mind it sort of rationalizes how he fights. And I think he'll continue fighting that way, which sucks. But hopefully we see Marinez again, or they can do a rematch. But because this guy Jackson Marinez can really fight. And in the scale, the grand scheme of the lightweight division, I think he could give anybody some good rounds. Anybody. And he clearly beat this fucking kid. I would love to know what you guys think about that decision. Let me know what you think of that fight, because in my mind, this is the worst decision of the boxing in the Corona world era. This shit was terrible, man. I don't want to talk like corruption, but I've been talking about corruption in boxing privately for years, and then on my YouTube channel years ago. These bad decisions gotta stop, because for the loser, it sets them back just as much as a real loss. Even if it's a ripoff, it sets them back just as much. Even if it's a fucked up bad decision, it only benefits the other guy. Maybe not in the long run, because they don't have the experience of, I lost, that shit doesn't work. But in the short run, Marinez goes to the back of the line a little bit now. And the importance of that on the end of your record, now he doesn't have that either. So he loses that part of his marketing, that I'm Jackson Marinez, I'm undefeated. He can't say that now. So I get very frustrated with these bad decisions, man. It's been going on for as long as I've been watching boxing, and long before that, and it probably won't end anytime soon. But I'd like to think that at some point, we could have a Saturday night of boxing with 3 cards on it and have all the decisions be good decisions. So that was fucking frustrating, and I did not like how Romero was carrying himself and how he was calling out all these guys, and he's just clearly unaware of his level. But at some point he'll find out, So the main event of this card was, former WBC super middleweight champion David Benavidez stopping Alexis Angulo at the end of the 10th round. He retired in his corner. And Benavidez had missed weight, and so he lost his belt. He wasn't eligible to win it back. The only one eligible was Angulo. So, Benavidez comes out of this fight with no belt, which is an unfortunate part of his, his marketing, is that he's not going to be able to Because that's ultimately what these belts are for. They're for marketing leverage, to be able to say you're a champion. If somebody has all 4 belts, that does still mean something in boxing. So right now, he's not a part of that equation. He's kind of got to go, behind some people on that line to get that spot back, because missing weight, obviously. It's hard, though, because how are you going to fault any of these guys for missing weight right now? Like, I know they're all under the same set of circumstances, essentially, but, I mean, anybody that's missing weight right now, a lot of it's got to be because they don't have the same access to the facilities they have. Once they get into the bubble and there's only, a certain amount of time that they have in the gym every day, it's not as easy to make weight. So as much as it's like I want to be hard on him if it was normal times, yeah, this would be really fucking unacceptable, and it still kind of is, but I think he gets some leniency on this one, man, especially with the performance he put in, because I've seen this guy Angulo against, Gilberto Ramirez. I watched his last fight against Anthony Sims where he won. This guy Angulo is tough, man. He doesn't have the best technique, but he's just like a very tough guy from Colombia who hits really hard and gets knockouts, and he's very effective. And usually when he fights these guys, he can stun them, and that sort of changes the dynamic of the fight. But I think Benavidez is at a different level. I think this guy Benavidez has the potential to be the best super middleweight in the world, and I feel like Canelo's going to have to fight him at some point. I think he's going to become completely unavoidable. I could be wrong, but the level of hand speed this guy has, the offensive fluidity and range that he has, there's so many different things he can do. His body punching, creating angles, he can stay on the back foot and kind of just stay on a long jab. And then he does, he's kind of funny. He does a little rope-a-dope where he'll sit on the ropes for a sec, and he'll just kind of let you let your hands go for a minute. He'll block some of it. He'll roll some of it. And then he'll just sort of, it won't be predictable, but he'll just sort of start walking towards you, and then he'll let, 5, 6 fast ones rip. And he's also, he's another one that's really good at not putting the same speed and power on every shot. He throws nice little touch shots to set up something bigger. So he'll touch you upstairs and rip downstairs. Touch you downstairs, rip upstairs. He'll start throwing the jab to the body to fake you out for the left hook upstairs. He's got a lot going on, man. And the speed of his combinations, he can just put 5, 6 very different punches together very quickly. And he's tall, he's big. He'll definitely be a light heavyweight at some point. I think he's a star in the making, to be honest with you, man. I'm a huge fan. I really enjoy watching this guy fight, and I think this performance says everything about who he is and what the direction he's taking. I think this guy, they're talking about him and Caleb Plant. I really, really like Caleb Plant's game. I don't think he can beat this kid. I don't think he can do anything with this kid. My opinion, Caleb Plant has great boxing skills, so you can never count him out, but this kid's got a lot going on, man. He's got a lot going for him. So I would say it's not going to be too long before you see David Benavidez with another belt around his waist. Yeah, so that's my take on David Benavidez. The last card of the night was the ESPN card. It was in York Hall in the UK. The main event was Carl Frampton and a guy named Darren Trainer. And before that, we got to see Mickey Conlan take on a French guy. I believe his name was Sofiane Takoucht. That could be wrong as fuck, but that's how they were saying it on the air. And this was actually kind of a tricky fight to watch, because the first half of the fight, Conlan was completely dominant. His boxing skills were great. He was ripping this guy to the body. And somewhere along the line, the referee started warning Conlan for low blows. And I didn't see any low blows, if I'm being honest. Then he warns him again, and this is the second one. I didn't see it again. I didn't see the low blow, and then it was somewhere in the 5th or 6th round, maybe even earlier, but he takes a point away. And I didn't see the low blow then. And then maybe a round or two later, there's a real low blow. And he lands a real low blow, and he gets another point taken away from him. So now we're in the back end of the fight, and Conlon doesn't feel comfortable punching to the body anymore. Everything is kind of upstairs, and to be honest, for about 2 rounds, he's just sort of languishing on the outside, being good with the defense and landing his jab. And, finally he stops this guy in the 10th round and kind of puts him out of his misery. And after basically winning every second of every round of the fight, but I felt bad for him that he wasn't able to fully display the range of stuff he was doing because the ref was so over involved in the fight and was so up his ass. I couldn't really figure out what his problem was. There was one low blow in there, but I wasn't seeing low blow after low blow that would have warranted the ref being like, hey, I'll fucking DQ you. And I think that's the fear he was walking around with for the last half of the fight is like, I'm going to get fucking DQ'd right now. So ultimately he was smart, he was careful, and he got the job done. And I think he's ready for a title shot sooner than later. They were saying he's thinking about moving down in weight. I don't know about all that. He knows his body better than anybody. So if he thinks he can do it, I think his power would be a lot better at 122. But if it drains him, it just means that those champions will be able to kind of beat up on him and he won't take it well. So we'll see. I don't know where Mickey Conlon goes from here, but that was a good performance. In the main event, Carl Frampton stopped this guy, Darren Trainer. The first 4 rounds or so, he looked kind of sluggish. It didn't look like he was real excited about this fight. It didn't look like this was something he was really getting up for. And like the 5th, 6th round, the reflexes sort of kicked in and his offense started flowing a little better and he started really sitting down on his shots and he wiped the guy out. I can't tell if he was just unmotivated or a little rusty or just being careful with the guy for the first couple rounds because it wasn't like he got hit with anything real. But ultimately he got the job done and did it without taking any punishment. So I would say mission accomplished if he was looking for a big fight in the near future. Because I think, at 126 or 130, I know this fight was at 135, but I think the belts he wants are at 130. And at 130, when he's really switched on, he's still a problem for any of those guys. I don't know if he can beat, Burchelt, but he's supposed to be fighting Jamel Herring at some point. That's what they were saying in the telecast. So I think that's a fight he wins, and I hope they put that together sooner than later. Next weekend, another 3-card Saturday. ESPN Plus has Eleider Alvarez versus Joe Smith Jr. Eleider Alvarez is the guy that stopped Sergey Kovalev. Obviously lost the rematch to Kovalev, and I don't know if he's fought. Maybe he's fought once since then, but Joe Smith is probably the first real opponent. Joe Smith being the last guy that Bernard Hopkins fought. And then on Fox, Sean Porter is going to be fighting a guy named Sebastian Formella. Don't know anything about Formella or Formella. I'm not sure. There's 2 L's. Either Formella or Formella. And then on DAZN, there's going to be Dillian White versus Alexander Povetkin and Katie Taylor versus Delphine Persoon. That's going to be a good card. That's going to be a good card. The Katie Taylor Delphine Persoon fight is a rematch. If you saw the first fight, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, go watch the first one because it's one of the best fights of last year. The pace on that fight is crazy. And then Dillian White's a guy that's, he's been knocking on the door of the heavyweight crown for years, man. He's been sort of trailing Anthony Joshua by like a little bit. And Povetkin is an opponent where if he can get a strong, dominant win over Povetkin, it gets very hard to deny him his shot anymore because he deserves it. I did a whole episode, many episodes ago about how the WBC needed to make sure that Dillian White got his shot because he's been the mandatory for 3 years. So definitely check that card out. I think White wins that fight. He's younger. He's fresher. Povetkin's got to be 40. and he's still a good fighter, but there's nothing spectacular. I think Dillian White can still be a champion on some level, and I think he's going to show that Saturday. So yeah, that's it, you guys. That's all I got for this week. This has been episode 14 of the Slip and Weave podcast. I appreciate all you guys that come here every week and stop by, talk a little boxing, and I'll see you next week. Peace.